They shouted for the dogs to tear her apart, certain that fear would break her before the animals ever reached her. They believed the starving K9 South would do what hunger and cruelty had trained them to do. What they did not know was that the woman standing alone in front of those cages carried a calm no one there could recognize. The kind earned only by those who have stared into chaos and learned how to quiet it. Asterisk, what city are you watching from today? If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe for more real stories about extraordinary people. Her name was Mara Hale, and on that night she wore no insignia, no badge of rank, nothing that would command respect from the men who circled her. To them, she was just another detainee pulled from a gray zone operation gone wrong, a disposable asset they could use to send a message. The compound squatted at the edge of the desert like a scar, all concrete and wire, far from witnesses and farther from mercy. Floodlights washed the yard in white glare, revealing the cages where the K9 South base, ribs visible, jaws snapping at the air. Mara had been trained to read rooms long before she learned to read battlefields. She saw the way the men avoided meeting her eyes. She saw the smiles that came from borrowed power. She felt the heat of the sand through her boots and the cold calculation behind their laughter. Somewhere inside, a steady voice reminded her to breathe and to stand tall. She had volunteered for missions that never made the reports. She had walked in the villages with nothing but a radio and a promise that extraction would come. She had been told more than once to hide who she was and let others underestimate her. Tonight, that training was the only armor she had. The handler with the scar across his cheek stepped forward and spat a curse. He explained the rules with a grin. The dogs had not eaten in days. They were trained to respond to fear and movement. The men wanted a show. They wanted her to run. The crowd leaned in, hungry for the moment when courage cracked. Mara did not run. She planted her feet and let her shoulders settle. She kept her hands open and low. She focused on the rhythm of her breath and the space between her thoughts. Years ago, a quiet instructor had told her that animals felt intention before they heard commands. He had told her that calm was louder than shouting. The gates rattled. The dogs surged forward, muscles tight, eyes wild. A ripple of excitement passed through the onlookers. This was supposed to be fast and final. The first dog reached the end of its leash and lunged, teeth flashing. Mara held her ground. She did not flinch. She met the animal's gaze without challenge and without fear. She spoke softly, not to command but to center herself. Her voice carried no threat. It carried certainty. The second dog strained, then hesitated. The first dog's growl faltered, confused by the stillness in front of it. Hunger and training pulled one way. Something older pulled another. The handler laughed and yanked the release. The leashes fell away. Time narrowed. The yard seemed to hold its breath. The dogs burst forward, then slowed. One veered off, circling. The other skidded to a stop a few feet from Mara, hackles raised, eyes searching. She lowered herself slightly, making her profile smaller, hands still open. She did not reach out. She did not turn away. A murmur spread through the crowd. This was not how it was supposed to go. Mara remembered the nights in training when she had been paired with K9 units, not as a handler, but as a partner. She remembered learning to move with intention, to offer stability when everything else screamed chaos. She remembered the trust that formed when fear was acknowledged and set aside. The first dog sat. It was a small motion, almost accidental, but it changed the air. The second dog followed, chest heaving, eyes softening. The yard fell silent. The handler swore and stepped forward, anger flaring. He raised his arm to provoke them again. Before he could, a voice cut through the stillness. Low and unmistakable. Stand down. A man emerged from the shadows near the gate, posture relaxed, presence undeniable. His uniform was plain, but the bearing was not. He looked at the dogs, then at Mara, then at the men who had turned cruelty into a game. His eyes held a promise that did not need to be spoken. He walked to the dogs first, kneeling to check their condition with practiced ease. They leaned into him, tails twitching, confusion replaced by relief. He rose and faced the crowd. "You put her in front of them to make a point," he said. "You failed?" The handler scoffed, but it sounded thin. "Who is she supposed to be?" he asked. The man turned to Mara. For a moment, respect passed between them, quiet and complete. He nodded once. "She is the reason these dogs did not bite tonight," he said. "She is also the reason your command ends here." The murmurs grew louder. Questions spilled out. Authority shifted. The man introduced himself with the calm of someone who did not need to explain. He was a Navy SEAL, sent to audit operations that had drifted into darkness. He had watched long enough. He had seen enough. He asked Mara to identify herself. She reached into her jacket and produced a folded patch, worn from years of use. When she opened it, the light caught the insignia. A hush fell. She was not a detainee. She was not an asset to be broken. She was a commander on a joint task force, embedded deep to assess threats that paperwork could not touch. Her lack of markings had been intentional. Her capture had been a test. What followed had been a confession. The men who had jeered found the ground suddenly interesting. Orders were given. Restraints clicked. Radios crackled with a new tone. Mara knelt again, this time beside the dogs. She waited until they leaned toward her, curious and cautious. She let them sniff her hands. She smiled, a small thing but real. Later, as dawn thinned the night, the SEAL walked with her along the perimeter. He thanked her for keeping her composure when others would have broken. She told him that composure was not the absence of fear. It was the decision to act with purpose despite it. They talked about responsibility, about the line between strength and cruelty. They talked about the cost of forgetting why uniforms existed in the first place. When the sun crested the horizon, the compound looked smaller, less absolute. Papers would be filed. Changes would be made. The dogs would be fed and reassigned. Consequences would follow. Mara left without ceremony. She carried no trophies, no applause. She carried the quiet satisfaction of knowing that restraint had spoken louder than rage. That calm had turned a weapon into a mirror. The story spread in whispers, then in lessons. It became a reminder passed to new recruits and seasoned leaders alike. Power tests character. Fear reveals it. Compassion commands it. What did this story make you feel? Where are you watching from? Subscribe to Soul Relief Stories for more real stories that heal the heart.